Frankenstein-like, where there have been heat-fixed yeast cells which have been used as offered, if you will, to this phenomenon as target cells. And upon the receipt of material of these dead heat-fixed yeast cells, we've had a restart of the cells, and we have the photographic and the...
So they've come back to life, is what you're saying, as a result of this.
There has been yes. I really don't even like using those terms. It's out of the book, off the edge of the pizza, so to speak. But we have had a restart of the cells in that location. However, the cells which have restarted from the dead cells are not the same cells, are not the same functioning cells as the precursor cells, the precursor yeast cells. We don't really know what they are.
You mean, are you saying that the cells changed and they're functioning differently after being exposed to this energy?
Yes, we started out with essentially a fungal cell, a budding yeast cell, which we heat fixed, and the result was more termed what one would normally term an animal-like cell.
Really? So it actually changed it from one thing. It actually transformed it from one thing to another.
It transformed it from one thing to another after imparting to it what we've come to call a template. There is an actual imparting of DNA to the cell. So we're receiving DNA essentially across some sort of an electromagnetic barrier through these what we call portals, these emissions of electromagnetic energy that then impart further discrete bundles of electromagnetism to our environment.
So
we're attempting to understand it. We don't understand what we are truly looking at the moment. We've not fully defined the Lotus as a system.
Okay, but are the particles, are these the Ganesh particles that are coming through?
We've defined three basic discrete varieties of particles that we have termed alpha, beta, and C-type particles. The A-type particles were nicknamed Ganesh particles, and that's what they are. They're nicknames. We had to call them something, so we called them Ganesh particles out of a historical deference, if you will, for the mover of obstacles. And we called the portals Shiva portals, as an opening or a changing. These are the admission or emission centers, if you will, for these Ganesh particles. And then we have still another variety of particle, which we call Selkies, and Marcia actually named them. These are C-type particles, and they basically act as almost like crossing guards, which line the periphery of an electromagnetic stream that leaves these portals, and basically act as guards or guideways surrounding the Ganesh particles, giving them a pathway to a target. Now the real question, I think, is how is the decision being made for a target? And we've identified on these Selkies what appear to be acoustic antennae. And I say appear to be acoustic antennae because changes of input into this system, acoustic changes, affect the behavior of these Selkie particles.
Sound. In other words,
yes.
Sound is affecting the Selkie particles, causing them to redirect the energy towards a target or away from a target?
Causing them to redirect their positions, which confine an electromagnetic stream or a river, if you will, being emitted from these portals. And you know, we've wondered what the portals are. They might be micro wormholes.
Okay.
We don't know right now.
And these are nano-sized portals? Is that
no,
what
these
you
are
said?
these are microscopic sized, somewhere within the 20 to well, it'd be very transient up to 50, but around the 10 to 20 micrometer size. And so they're observable quite readily under a compound microscope if the conditions are held constant and if they are treated delicately. They're extremely transient phenomena.
In other words, you don't have a control over them.
No. And in fact, we don't do any direct propagations anymore. The last direct propagation was done last November, and we received for the second time an anomalous growth of cells in the medium surrounding the crystal that we were using. We were using a quartz crystal because of the silicon oxide nature of the quartz crystal. And we received an anomalous growth of cells of unknown origin around the crystal. So we do not know where these cells were from. We've had that happen now twice, and we've determined that we're getting a little too good, if you will, at the science of propagating these portals, and we're possibly receiving a negative consequence as a result.
In other words, those could actually be an alien life form.
Indeed.
Okay.
Indeed, they could.
Very interesting.
They could be extraterrestrial.
Cells. They're microscopic, right? So.
Right. I mean, you know, we've received a mix of very unusual cells, which I was not able to cytologically type, and also cells which appeared nearly prosaic to our ocean here. Microscopic one-celled organisms, haptophytes.
But they came out of nowhere.
The material that we had provided to the experiment prohibited a cross-contamination, the ability for this to have been a cross-contamination. So they came from somewhere. They came from somewhere. Now, also, what we've done is a repeat of a very famous experiment called the Spallanzani experiment with beef broth, but we put a tweak on it, if you will. In the Spallanzani experiments were experiments designed to either prove or disprove the idea of spontaneous generation. And so the question is then begged, are we exhibiting spontaneous generation here? And I think that we have zero evidence that this is spontaneous generation. And allow me to explain why. The Spallanzani experiment that we repeated, we did it exactly the way the famous experiment was originally done, with beef broth that had been boiled, but we actually had it autoclaved, so that we had pressure and heat both acting on it.